Welcome back. If you're planning a last-minute trip this holiday season, take my advice, don't. Airfares are skyrocketing. Not just airfares, cancelled flights, long lines, and unscheduled delays at India's busiest routes have also become a matter of concern. Flyers are disappointed, social media is flooded with complaints, and the Aviation Ministry had no choice but to step in when a tragedy exposed the predatory nature of surge pricing. Airfares to Odisha skyrocketed after the train accident when families rushed to buy tickets to bring back their loved ones. They had to pay a bomb. Today, Civil Aviation Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia chaired a meeting with airline representatives over surge pricing. In this 45-minute-long meeting, the minister advised the airlines to monitor airfares, especially on certain select routes. He also highlighted the sector where the airfares have skyrocketed: Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata, Hyderabad, Bangalore, tourist hotspots like Leh, Srinagar, the northeast. These routes have witnessed a massive surge in airfares recently. Govt's insolvency and the holiday season are the two big reasons behind this price surge. The Aviation Ministry has called the surge abnormal and asked airlines to self-regulate. While we are still coming to terms with the horrific train accident in Odisha, the Civil Aviation Ministry has sounded caution. The government has said during a calamity, the airlines must keep a tight check on the pricing in view of the humanitarian situation. Now, what the government is also saying is that airlines need to self-regulate. They need to ensure themselves that there is no surge pricing which reaches abnormal levels. And they say the DGCA will keep a check on it. But will that be enough? Point is, earlier the Civil Aviation Minister had spoken about skyrocketing airfares at the Times Economic Conclave as well. Listen in to what he had said.
Mr. Scindia, let me now ask a Aam Aadmi question. And we have a viewer who has sent us a question who says that Delhi to Leh tickets today cost 52,000 rupees and Delhi to Paris 56,000 rupees. Now, do you think there's any comparison between the ticket prices, especially to some of these routes which are skyrocketing all the time, and passengers in low-cost airlines, so-called low-cost airlines, have to shell out a huge sum?
So first, let me add a caveat and say that civil aviation is a deregulated sector, okay? And the last thing that Navika, you, I'm sure, would be auguring for is to start regulating a deregulated sector, because then for all the years that you've been in this business, you'll be going in reverse gear from what you've been advocating throughout your career. But that being said, I think still
Maybe the regulator needs a nudge?
Sorry?
Is the regulator looking at these prices? Do they need a nudge? Because these are questions people are asking.
Correct. So the point that I was trying to make to you, and I'm going to try and make that point once again, is that we are a deregulated sector, right? In 1993, in fact, my father brought in open sky policy, as you well recall, and we deregulated the civil aviation sector. So there is no regulator for pricing of fares. But having said that, I think it's important to understand the dynamics across which this industry works. And there are two dynamics that are in play today. One, very clearly, the civil aviation sector and the industry is a seasonal industry. So you have high points, which start in festive season in October. So October through Jan is high season for this industry. Then you go into a lull, starting Jan until April, May, when the summer season kicks in and holidays and all of that sort of season starts, which is what we're going through right now. And therefore, you have high demand that steps in again, which then peters off prior to monsoon. So A, we are a seasonal industry, and therefore there are crests and troughs from a demand point of view. B, we've had a unusual situation and an unusual crisis that we've had to deal with. The sector that you've talked about, and very rightfully so, used to be serviced by Govt. And the very fact that Govt has applied at to NLCT and has going through its restructuring, which means that there's been a pullback from the 315 odd routes that they were flying, has meant that there has been an excess demand on the routes that they were flying. Now, we've given additional routes to other airlines, but it's a very piquant situation, if I may use that word, because I doubt whether any sector has kind of seen the vicissitudes that civil aviation has seen over the last 3 years. 3 years ago, you had a time when all your planes were sitting on the ground and there was not a single passenger for any one of these aircraft. And today, we have all our aircraft up in the air, but we don't have enough aircraft to service the demand. And the reason why we don't have enough aircraft is because the main suppliers of aircraft across the world, whether it's Airbus or it's Boeing or engine suppliers, Pratt & Whitney, all have supply chain issues. And therefore, they're not able to service in terms of the demand that is out there.
Let me go straight across to my colleague Madhav, who is joining us from the newsroom. Madhav, I understand the point that Mr. Jyotiraditya Scindia is trying to make. What he's told airlines today is, guys, self-regulate. Ensure that there is no surge pricing to an extent where a Delhi-Leh air ticket costs more than an air ticket from Delhi to Paris. And it's happened. At one point of time, the air ticket from Delhi to Leh was some 50,000 rupees. My point is just telling airlines to self-regulate be enough? Because if they had to self-regulate, they would have self-regulated by now.
Well, absolutely. And, the point is this, that Shreya, it has unfortunately taken a tragedy such as Odisha for this to come to light, and outrage on social media for this to actually kick in. The question was asked, of course, by Navika at the India Economic Conclave last week, where he did try to give the reasoning of, a deregulated sector, also saying that there are price buckets. And as you get closer and closer to the date of travel, the price bucket does tend to increase. But the point is that following the turbulence of the COVID years, where airlines were completely had to ground their entire fleet in places, had very, very low operations due to the surge in COVID as far as the various waves are concerned, and also at the same time were operating with a higher ATF price, which is almost 50% of the cost of the entire airline's operations. In such a situation to now, the number of passenger traffic, the amount of passenger traffic, the volume of it has increased beyond pre-COVID levels. At a time like this, once things have come back to normal, can airlines be allowed to profiteer at the cost of the passengers is a very, very big question indeed. And this has been a concern for months. There are, for instance, Twitter users who've posted on social media how traveling from Delhi to Leh last minute is more expensive than traveling from Delhi to Paris. Traveling from Delhi to Mumbai is more expensive than traveling from Delhi to Dubai. So things are becoming, a bit ridiculous in terms of the pricing. And that's something that airlines and aviation companies have really got to get their act together on. And of course, as much as the minister might say that the entire issue is one of a sector being deregulated, the very fact that this messaging has gone out, and also, of course, in cases where accidents, where natural disasters do take place, to avoid the last-minute passenger pain of high prices, certainly steps will have to be taken. And it's not that it's happening only in those sectors. The fact is that even now in the peak of the holiday season, if you try and book a ticket to any destination, with a gap of just 24 hours, and there may be very real, professional or personal reasons that one may have to go for. There could be any kind of an emergency, perhaps even a personal one. Why should those passengers have to pay such high prices? That's a question that many are asking, because this certainly wasn't the case about 8 to 10 months ago. Why has this suddenly changed? And does the kind of difficulty that airlines have had to go through about 2-3 years ago justify this kind of a situation? Now, with the ministry coming out and sending out a very clear signal, what are we going to see, and what action can we expect on part of the DGCA? Remember, they are monitoring those airfares. What is the action that they can take? Will it be just in the form of advisories? Because the government does have force majeure powers when it comes to its own sector, and therefore, if it can be implemented, for instance, COVID price bans during the pandemic, why can it not be done this time around is also a question that many customers and many of the paying passengers would be asking at this point of time.
And it's a question we are going to ask as well. Is it time for some sort of caps to return to airfares? Is it time for that? Given the fact that when Manipur was burning, again, we saw air prices from Manipur to Delhi skyrocket. We have seen that in the case of Odisha as well. This is predatory vulture behavior. It needs to be stopped. Are caps the only way? That's something we'll talk about. Thank you, Madhav, for joining us. Professor Sriram Khanna is the managing editor of Consumer Voice magazine. He's joining us on the broadcast. Ashwini Kakkar is managing partner in Adventure. He's joining us as well. We have callers as well. We are opening up our phone lines because many people who come under the bracket of middle class like me will say that last minute, if I need to buy a ticket to Leh, to Manipur, to Odisha, how is it fair for me to be paying 50,000 rupees for a one-way flight? That's simply not fair. This is an emergency. In an emergency, you can't fleece me. Before I get to my guests, let me quickly go across to my callers. Captain Jaspal calling us this evening. Captain Jaspal, good evening. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Shreya. You are a lady with tremendous guts and consistency. You are trying to find meat in the eagle's nest. You will find none. Secondly, आए बाहर खिले फूल सबके वास्ते ये कहने की बात है कभी ऐसा हुआ भी है. And thirdly, who will bell the cat? Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Jaspal. Who will bell the cat? It will have to be the ministry, not the DGCA, but that's something I'll ask my guests. Anil Sood is calling us from Delhi. Anil Sood, please go ahead. Good evening.
Good evening, Shreya. This is nothing but black marketing. When pulses are black marketed, action is taken. When air tickets are black marketed, then it is called surge price. Why such a difference? Why airlines should be behaving like ordinary traders? They are nothing. They are corporates, after all, established corporates. They can't reduce themselves to the street time trader. And again, Ministry of Civil Aviation rather should be rechristened as Ministry of Criminal Association. How can they keep quiet like this and allow this kind of fleecing going on time and again? I'm shocked. This has never happened. How can it happen now? Opening up sky doesn't mean that you open up everybody's pocket. This is daylight, broad daylight loot, and this must come to an end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's quickly get in a caller from Mumbai before I go to my guests. Saurabh, you're calling us from Mumbai. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So I had a quick question. As we are looking at the private players in the sky, we also have a government-owned company called the Airfares, which flies from Delhi to Kullu, and their prices are all above 18 to 25,000 year long. Not only during any touristic season, but even in the normal time, the fare is never below 25,000 to come back from a Kullu to Delhi flight.
Wow. So, okay, so you're saying the government itself is guilty of it. Thank you. Thanks. I'll put that question to our experts who are joining us. A quick question from Ram as well, who's on the line with us from Mumbai. Ram, please go ahead. Good evening.
I'm Ram's wife, Pushpa here. My quick question was that when we are talking about aviation in general on this show, why are we showing the picture of Air India?
What's the problem with that, ma'am?
No, I mean aviation in general. Why are we depicting only Air India? Because it comes across as if this pertains only to Air India.
No. It doesn't. It pertains to every airline in this country right now. So you make a good point. And maybe there should be some variation in the shots that we put out on air. You make a good point, so we'll just ensure that. But did you have another question as well, Pushpa ji?
No, nothing else. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We are always open to criticism that our viewers send our way as well. So thank you very much. It's a good observation. We'll keep that in mind. Raman Bala, you're calling us from Navi Mumbai. Please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for allowing me to share my views. As a professor, I've been teaching people on pricing management, but this exercise, which started a very long time back about the surge pricing, actually gives an advantage to the airline industry to make more money at the time when the real need is coming. Some of my friends who were met very badly in that accident, actually when they went to Calcutta and then take a flight from there, they called me from there and said that, boss, suddenly the prices are increasing. Now, this has to have some sort of a stop somewhere, because if you're claiming 50,000, what are the impacts on that? Did the petrol price increase when you're charging me 50,000, or any other cost of yours have increased just because of that you're charging me 50,000? ये सब clarity नहीं मिल रहा है. Because demand आ रहा है, you are charging money. As rightly said, the old movie Roti Kapda Makan, जिसमें दिखाया कि भी black marketing क्या होती है, we are seeing the same thing happening in a different form, different style of words, which is called a surge pricing and everything. I think for a normal citizen, this is really a bad politics or a bad management decision.
You're the second person who's calling this black marketing. You're the second person who's calling this black marketing. I hope airline companies are listening to this. And I hope the Aviation Ministry is listening to this as well. Elena, you're calling us from Manipur. Please go ahead. Good evening.
Hello.
Yes, Elena, go ahead, please. You're calling us from Manipur.
Yeah. Hello.
Okay. I think we are, the line to Elena was not very clear. We'll try and patch her up as well. RVR Murthy, you're calling us from Chennai. Good evening. Please go ahead.
The first point is, you must remove that advertisement of Air India stating that Air India fares only not high. All the airline fares are high. One. Airlines means you must show all airlines. Otherwise, you must put only a plane. You must not put the Air India logo and show it. It is not acceptable. One. Two. If the lady who told previously also, I accept her views. That is the right way of doing it. You must immediately stop it. Next one, the fare increase, that 55,000 you said from Delhi to Leh, was it economy or executive class? You have not specified on that.
Sir,
See, when you are giving some information...
Sir, it was in executive class. Yeah, it's in executive class, sir.
Travel in executive class, it must be for a filthy rich person. Normal person will travel in a normal class, economy, or premium economy. They will not travel in executive class. Executive class are all cream people because the fare is high or a requirement on an urgent basis. So you put clearly, clarity has to be there. And and previously also there was 1 hour
Mr. Murthy, Mr. Murthy, can I just ask you, you're telling me that surge pricing is okay, that the airlines are allowed to. I take your criticism. And I'm grateful that we have such observant viewers. So I'm thankful for that. Keep it coming. But I'm taking that, with what you're saying surge pricing is okay. That if it's a surge pricing in an executive class, the rich people can afford to pay for it. But the point is that we've seen this surge pricing during, when the tragic accident took place in Odisha. That is when we saw a surge pricing for Bhubaneswar. We saw it in the Delhi to Manipur flight when Manipur was burning as well. So is this predatory pricing something that you're okay with? I'm fairly certain you're not, because it's not only rich people taking executive class flights who are impacted. It's the middle class that is impacted as well. But I take your criticism and I take it well. One last caller before I go to my guest. Sushil, you're calling us from Chennai. Please go ahead.
Yes. Hi, good evening. Basically, I don't want to criticize anyone, but I've had a bad experience earlier. I had to take a flight from Delhi to Chennai, and unfortunately, I had made a mistake of booking the ticket a month later. It was supposed to be a month earlier. I went to the counter and they informed me that I had made the mistake. Now, I said I want to take the flight now. And the ticket, which was 5,250, they asked me to pay 25,000, which I refused, and I took a flight the next day. Now, this emergency flight, they must reduce the prices. God forbid someone has an emergency of some close relative passing away, and you have to rush. And in that time of despair and sadness, you have to pay such high fares. It is not fair. But the airlines also have to survive. You look at the airlines, all of them are making a loss. It's okay if they increase the fares by 15 to 20%, not more. This is what I think. And you're doing a good job.
Okay.
I hope
Thank you very much. Thank you. I hope so too. Thank you very much for joining us. Let me get in my guess. It was important for us to hear the views of people who fly. Ashwini Kakkar, you've heard all our viewers. You know, some have been critical of what we've been putting out, but most have been saying that the surge pricing is predatory. The last gentleman said, look, airlines have to look after themselves as well, but the airlines are doing fairly well. I mean, in April itself, domestic airlines flew some 128 or 129 lakh passengers. Where is the need for this vulture-like behavior, which some of our viewers have called black marketing?
Shreya, I totally agree with some of the views that have been expressed. I think this is a very crazy situation right now. And it must be borne in mind that the sick people travel on airlines. People who have deaths in the family need to go by airlines because we are a very large country. We are the size of Europe. So in order to get from place A to place B, it's not a luxury to travel by air. It is a necessity. And a lot of middle-class people travel by air as well. So I think as far as, a small increase in prices is concerned, I think we are all for it. There's not a problem. But predatory pricing is the question that is being asked today, and rightly so. I know that there has been a special situation that has been created in the last few months, and that is partly because a lot of the Indigo planes are on the ground because the Pratt & Whitney engines have not been working and have not been replaced. SpiceJet has a specific situation because, they have some financial issues and things like that. And in the meantime, Go First has completely collapsed. So there is a huge shortfall of planes in the sky, and the demand has been constantly growing. Averagely, if the GDP grows by, let's say, 5%, then air travel normally grows by 10%, which is double of GDP growth. And that's also what is happening in India's case. And travel, pressures have forced the airlines to kind of increase their prices. But there is a limit to which they should increase their prices. They cannot go in for predatory pricing, especially
there is a limit. That's the point I'm trying to make.
In times of calamities and in times...
There is a limit. You're right there, Mr. Kakkar. There is a limit. And don't cross that limit. But Professor Sriram Khanna, the government is saying, ki bhai, aisa mat karo. This is what the government has said today, right? That self-regulate yourself. My point is, will self-regulation help at all? Or does the government now need to step in and say, this is the limit, you cannot cross it?
Madam, I have also heard the speech of the Honorable Minister, which you played at the beginning of the program. And he's saying we are guiding the industry not to do this and do self-regulate. My plea is that no self-regulation works with business in this country, because business is in the business of making money 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. And if you tell them not to make money, then you must be naive. And if you are not naive, then you are probably in league with them. And I like to allege that the Ministry of Civil Aviation has a very friendly and cushy relationship with the airline industry. They are not regulating the industry. They are in cahoots with the industry, and they overlook every problem that consumers face with the airline. And this problem of sharply rising prices, you have described it as predatory pricing. Somebody has described it as black marketing. You also described it as surge pricing. I would like to say it is nothing but extortion. You have desperate people wanting to travel from place A to place B. The number of seats are limited because there's a shortage of planes, because of peculiar circumstances just described by the previous speaker. And the airline, like an extortionist, will put up the price to a point where it becomes, the Leh price becomes equivalent to the Paris price. I'm sorry to say, this is bad public policy. And if it is a reflection of the philosophy of Sabka Vishwas and Sabka Vikas, I'm sorry. This is not Sabka Vishwas, this is Sabka exploitation. And I'd like to say that Mr. Scindia is talking about open sky policy. Yes, we've had an open sky policy. But in this open sky policy, the government of India, and particularly the predecessors of Mr. Scindia, who were in his seat, they devised a system called the price cap, that your price can go. You have surge pricing, but there is a limit beyond which it cannot go. And what Mr. Scindia has done recently,
correct,
he is quietly, on the advice and guidance and cajoling of his friends in the airline industry, has removed this cap. I accuse him of conniving with the industry to exploit consumers in situations like what has been described in his program. And I would like to appeal to the Prime Minister to rein in his minister, who is in cahoots with the industry. He's in the plea of this industry trying to make profit. He's allowing them to make super profits and extort money from consumers who need protection. He's not protecting consumers, he's protecting profits.
Those are grave charges.
And I think that is lopsided. Thank you very much.
Okay, Professor Khanna, that's a grave charge to make. That's a very grave charge to make. These are grave charges to make, but let's see if the minister replies to it. For the moment, I'm going to thank all of you for joining us, Professor Khanna and Ashwini Kakkar. Thank you very much. We have a few more callers. Unfortunately, we are completely out of time. So thank you, viewers, for joining us. Thank you for your phone calls. Thank you for your observations. And more importantly, thank you for your criticism. We are glad you see this show so closely. We are glad you see this channel so closely. Wrap from me. Thanks for watching. Nivedana is up next with all the news at 9. Do stay with us.